1962 was a tumultuous time, already 100 years after the abolition of slavery. But the black civil rights movement is still in full swing. The racial conflicts still keep growing. The story was happening in that time. Let's see how to hook up a tycoon. First of all, pay attention at the tycoon.
And you see this here hat? I want you to guard it with your life.
Later, pay some money to bribe the custodian. Take the tycoon's hat. When the tycoon was angering, find a safe place to hide. Finally, choose a time to return the hat to the tycoon. This man not only earning, but also gained the trust of the tycoon.
Now on, you don't call me Mr. Oscuro. You hear me? I'm your pal Gio.
He named Tony. As a barman, he is not only good at reading people, but also good at handling emergencies. For guests who making trouble, Tony always adhere to use punch with no nonsense. For the people around, as long as there is Tony, the more difficult problems can be easily solved. But he, like most white people, Tony is deeply racist. One day, two black workers borrowed 2 cups of water at home. Tony saw those and didn't hesitate to throw their used cups into the trash. His wife could only shake her head, she knowing that Tony couldn't change. On this day, Tony's bar need to be closed for renovation for 2 months. That means the recent period of time Tony unemployed. In the face of the huge expenses of the family, he had to go to the hot dog eating contest. For a mere $50, he ate 26 hot dogs. But this is not a long-term solution. Tony needs a job to survive these 2 months. Tony's friend introduced him to a job, a doctor who was looking for a driver. Tony went to the interview decisively. When he arrived at the doctor's home, he found a variety of precious and rare furnishings in the room. But what surprised Tony even more was that the person he was working for was a black man. His name is Donald Shirley and he is a famous pianist. Preparing to go to the Southern for a 2-month performing tour. But the further south you go, the more serious the discrimination against blacks. So Dr. Shirley needs a shrewd person to guard him, and Tony is just the right person. But when Tony heard that he had to wash clothes and socks for black people, Tony couldn't accept it anyway. He asked a high salary, and then told Shirley that there was no problem driving him and doing bodyguard. But don't even think about doing the servant. Tony had expected this to dissuade Dr. Shirley from hiring him. The next day, Shirley called to Tony's wife to borrow her husband's. Of course, the salary will be given as Tony's requirements. In order to support the family, Tony took the job. Before leaving, the brokerage handed Tony a green book, a safety guide for black travelers. Because at that time, there was a clear line between blacks and whites, the book clearly indicates which hotels and restaurants are available to host blacks. In those years of racial discrimination, many blacks thought they could avoid a lot of unnecessary trouble with this book. When he left, Tony's wife gave him 2 requests: to write home regularly, to report peace, and return before Christmas. As the tour began, Shirley reminded Tony of 2 things on the tour. One was to make sure that piano on the tour was Steinway. The second is to ensure that every night have a bottle of Cutty Sark delivered to his room. Tony stuffed food into his mouth while taking note of Shirley's request. While rest in a service area, Tony was attracted by some exquisite jade. He wanted to buy a piece to take back to his children, but was put off by the high price. Just then, he found a piece of jade that fell out on the ground. Looking around at no one, Tony casually pocketed it. This scene was seen by another musician. Shirley knew the incident and asked Tony to return the jade. But Tony thought it was he picked up. Why return it? Shirley didn't budge at all. He told Tony he will not be allowed to drive if he didn't return the stone. Under Shirley's strong insistence, Tony finally compromised. Soon they arrived at the first stop of the tour. Before the concert, Shirley suggested Tony that he should change his swearing habit, considering that there were upper-class people in the concert. This made Tony very disgusted, and he even thought that Shirley was picking on him. The performance began, Shirley's fingers like dancing on the piano. The beautiful sound of the piano touched everyone present. Seeing this scene, Tony was mesmerized. He seemed to reacquaint himself with Shirley. The next day, they arrived in Indiana. Tony came to the venue to check out the piano. He found that the piano organizer provided not Steinway, and it was littered with junk. Tony talked to staff to coordinate the matter, but the staff despised Shirley and even insulted Tony to his face.
Who you think you're talking to, greaseball?
Not surprisingly, Tony got Shirley to Steinway piano in his own way. Watching Shirley's wonderful performance, Tony was happy like a child. Even he himself did not realize that Shirley was slowly coming into his own. In the letters to his wife, in addition to his own chores, Tony talked most about Shirley. This day Tony bought KFC bucket on the road. He took one and wanted to share it with Shirley, but Shirley said he never eat fried chicken although he was black. Tony couldn't believe it. He pulled out a chicken leg and handed it directly to Shirley.
I'm throwing it in the bag. Don't you dare.
After repeatedly refusing to have to accept it, crossed his orchid fingers and tasted carefully, and fall into its deliciousness. With the fried chicken handed to him again, Shirley was active in accepting. He also learned Tony throw bones out of the window. But when he saw Tony throw the paper cup out of the window, he let Tony pick up the paper cup back without hesitate. The leftover bones can be destroyed by the critters, but the paper cups are polluting the environment. They arrived in Louisville at night, and as they get deeper into the South, the racial discrimination became more and more severe, and they had to stay in different hotels to rest. Shirley sat outside as usual, sipping whiskey alone. He looked out of place with the other blacks. At this time, a man with glasses invited Shirley to play ball with him.
Oh, I'd rather not. What, you too high and mighty?
To avoid embarrassment, Shirley lied that he was going to meet a friend, got up and left the hotel. On the other side, a musician came running to ask for help. He said that Shirley was in trouble at the bar. When Tony arrived in the bar, he saw Shirley being humiliated by a few white punks.
Get your hands off!
A punk pulled out a knife, and Tony touched his hand to the back of his waist, covering up a pose of pulling out a gun. Bar's boss, afraid that things get out of hand, also pulled out a shotgun and let them go. After return to the hotel, Tony warned Shirley seriously.
From now on, you don't go nowhere without me. Nowhere! Got it?
I understand.
The next day, they continued to drive as nothing had happened. Suddenly the car broke down on the road, and while Tony was fixing the car, Shirley get off the car. The black farmers across the street saw Shirley and stopped what they were doing. Shirley also looked at them thoughtfully. The same skin color, different fate. This made both Tony and Shirley feel uncomfortable. In the evening, they arrived in North Carolina. The organizers insultingly prepared a fried chicken combo for Shirley. Shirley understood that this was a metaphorical discrimination against him, but he still finished the show. In the break time, Shirley wanted to go to the washroom.
Are you looking for the commode?
Yes.
Yeah, here, let me help you. It's right out there for that pond.
For Shirley, he would rather drive 30 minutes back to the hotel to solve the problem than never accept such discrimination. Tony suggested that he settle on the side of the road, which made Shirley even think that Tony was discriminating against him. After the show, Shirley remained a gentleman, shaking hands with the guests, which made Tony very puzzled. A musician told Tony that Shirley could have tripled the appearance fee in the North and was sought after, but he still chose to come to the South, where discrimination is very serious, to perform. The reason for doing that was all about breaking such prejudice. One day, Dr. Shelley stumbled upon Tony writing a letter to his wife. The content is like a running account, so Shelley took the initiative to offer to help Tony write a letter.
Falling in love with you was the easiest thing I've ever done.
Nothing matters to me but you. And every day I'm alone.
The picturesque depiction makes Tony's wife, who is far away in New York, feel the deep love. This day Shirley take a fancy to a suit. They walked into the store with the intention of trying it on, but was directly rejected by the owner of the clothing store. Here black people don't have the qualification to try on. Shirley showed a gentleman's smile and left. Tony witnessed everything, but cannot do anything. The piece played by Shirley during the performance was full of anger, and he could only vent his emotions in this way. This night Tony received a call that Shirley was in trouble again. It turns out that Shirley was harassed by a white gay in a public bathroom, led to some misunderstanding. The police were about to take Shirley away, Tony with bribery to set up 2 police officers to save Shirley. But Shirley is not any gratitude, but also complained that Tony should not bribe them. They had a big fight over this. Days later, they arrived in Memphis. Tony met his friends here. They teased Tony in Italian, why working for a black man, and promised if Tony worked for them, we'll give Tony double salary. Tony answered a few words casually, and with his friends arranged to meet at the bar at 8 o'clock. But Tony did not know that Shirley understood Italian. The longer the contact, the more Shirley felt that the trip could not be separated from Tony. He waited early at Tony's door and offered to give Tony a raise in the hope that he would not leave him. But Tony said he did not need a raise. The reason why he had an appointment with his friends was to go and refuse their goodwill. Shirley chased up and took the initiative to apologize to Tony for last night. They looked at each other and smiled, have put down the heart. Continuing south, they laughed and talked along the way, and Shirley's performance also reaped the praise of the people. But not long after, they met trouble again. On the way to Mississippi, through such a town, local regulations after the sunset, black people are not allowed to stay in the town. A pair of discriminatory police officers saw a black man in the car and pulled them over and made things difficult.
Oh, I see. That's why you driving him around. You half a nigger yourself. Hands in the air! Now!
Tony's punches didn't cut it this time. Tony was detained, but Shirley did not understand why he was also detained. He asked to call his lawyer. Police agreed, and it wasn't long before the police department received a call from the governor and was asked to release them immediately. Several police officers realized that they had messed with the wrong people. After being released, Tony knew that the person who just talked to Shirley on the phone was a Bobby Kennedy. This made Tony extremely excited, but Shirley felt very humiliated. They had another argument, and Tony felt that he was constantly running around for a living, while the high and mighty Shirley was living in a castle. He was far more of a black man than Shirley. Hearing this, Shirley's emotions completely exploded, and he roared at Tony in the rain.
Yes, I live in a castle, Tony! Alone! And rich white people pay me to play piano for them because it makes them feel cultured. But as soon as I step off that stage, I go right back to being just another nigga to them. And I suffer that slight alone because I'm not accepted by my own people, because I'm not like them either. So if I'm not black enough, and if I'm not white enough, and if I'm not mad enough, then tell me, Tony, what am I?
Tony was asked. Looking at Shirley's back and helpless feelings, he did not know how to comfort Shirley. Both became silent along the way, and soon they arrived at the last stop of the tour. Here the discrimination was even worse. They used the utility room as Shirley's dressing room, which Shirley accepted. But when he got dressed and came to the restaurant, he was told that blacks could not eat here. This time, Shirley finally chose to resist.
Either I eat in this room, or I'm not performing tonight.
The manager pulled Tony aside, hoping he could persuade Shirley, and took out $100 and handed it to Tony.
With all due respect, sir, you wouldn't be in a job like this if you couldn't be bald.
Stop. Tony, I'll play if you want me to.
Tony froze. He did not expect that Shirley had left the decision to him.
Let's get the fuck out of here.
They ignored the manager's retention and left the place. Shirley followed Tony to a bar for black, where the people were dressed in shabby clothes. After eating, at Tony's encouragement, Shirley sat down at the bar's piano. It was his first time performing for black men. The wonderful performance won the applause of everyone present. For him, he has never been so relaxed as now. When leaving the bar, Tony told Shirley not to approach the car and fired a shot into the sky. There are two men who tried to rob Shirley ran away. The doctor shuddered and said, "I knew you had a gun." In order for Tony to fulfill the promise with his wife, Shirley decided to brave the snow and set out immediately. Do you remember the jade? Shirley let Tony take out to bless them. So Shirley knew early on, Tony didn't put the jade back at all.
I feel safer already.
You're a real prick. You know that?
Once again at night they were pulled over by the police, but this time, the police just came to alert them that there was a tire leak. Tony thanked the police, and changed the tire. The person driving the car switched to Shirley. Because of the long drive, Tony's so tired that he fell asleep in the back seat. They finally arrived New York on Christmas night. Tony invites Shirley to his home to having Christmas with him, but Shirley refuses. He returned to the empty castle alone. Shirley felt the loneliness that only belonged to himself. On the other hand, Tony's house is lively, but he has an inexplicable sense of loss. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. It turned out to be the next door neighbors came together for the holidays. Tony was just about to close the door, but found Shirley standing at the door with a bottle of wine. The loss on Tony's face was swept away. He embraced Shirley with excitement.
This is Dr. Donald Shirley.
Thank you for sharing your husband with me.
Thank you for helping him with the lettuce.
This is a story that really happened. In those days of discrimination, many people were born unequal, but not souls. Everyone has their own prejudices, just like Tony was also disdainful of Shirley at first. But we also saw that all of Dr. Shirley's contradictory actions, dignity and character were tested. Tony and Shirley represent different colors and different classes, from strangers to familiar, from confrontation to intimacy. They in the long contact, subtle change each other, until finally become each other's best friends, breaking prejudice. This is a very worthy of watching full movie. Watch a movie, watch a life. Here is the Minutes Movies. Describe me. See you next time.